A reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, every priest stands daily at his ministry, offering frequently those same sacrifices that can never take away sins. But this one offered one sacrifice for sins and took his seat forever at the right hand of God. Now he waits until his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering he has made perfect forever those who are being consecrated. Where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer offering for sin. The word of the Lord. One thing I appreciated about being able to be in Fort Wayne this week for my grandpa's funeral was seeing his life at his funeral in a certain way that was like a vista, an overarching view of his life. Just to think that most of the people in the room, aside from my grandmother, who he was married to for over 65 years, most of the people in the room he had held as babies, which is kind of an interesting observation because the room was somewhat full of my family and my cousins, his 6 kids and 17 grandchildren and 11 great-grandchildren. All of those, some of those weren't able to be there, but many of us were filling the room, and all of us were there in our hearts together as a family. And thinking of that vista of a life, seeing a life, I remember being there at the chapel of the retirement community where his funeral was and seeing him laying in the casket, and also going over to an area where there were collages that my aunts and cousin had put together, and shown pictures of him with my cousins on tractors and my aunts and uncles growing up, pictures from the farm and pictures of a family reunion. And really you got a historic kind of timeline of different hairstyles through the years, except for my grandpa with his consistent hairstyle. And it really brought up the question, like, looking at a whole life, really just in awe of the grace that had been poured into his life and the love that he shared with all of us and he shared with me. And it allowed me to think of the question, what does it mean to be fruitful in life? What does a fruitful life look like? What does that mean for us? Now, I think I was impacted especially by one of the antiphons during the funeral that said, blessed are those who die in the Lord. Let them rest from their labors, for their good deeds go with them. Their good deeds go with them. Now it's in relating to this reading, think of the Levitical priests that Hebrews is referring to here, and even our own devices that left to ourselves, we're not capable of living fruitful lives in the sense that we are not capable of salvation on our own. This is an important part of our faith. So are we just left in a state of perpetual sin? No. We keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the leader and perfecter of faith, because for the sake of the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. With all the complexities of life, with all the mess of sinfulness, with the pain of having to let our loved ones go, with the pain of being at their funerals and losing our loved ones, with the pain of sin and darkness, and even the question of what to do when natural disasters strike, and all the confusion of this world, there is a simple answer, that Jesus is the way. In the face of all of our sin, simple answer, Jesus is the way. And Jesus has offered the one sacrifice for sins. And because of this, God greatly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name. And it's interesting this evening that this Vespers tonight we start off with Psalm 110. So it's a Sunday evening prayer too. Psalm 110 is an Easter triumph psalm. It's talking about the Lord said to my Lord, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right, and I will make your enemies my footstool. And this is referenced here in our reading from Hebrews as well. An Easter triumph, something that early Christians would have recited to each other as an Easter reminder. Christ, the victim and priest, has conquered death, and his enemies are put at his feet. Christ has conquered. Christ has triumphed through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. The victory over death has been accomplished. Jesus has conquered death through his sacrifice, through his redemption that he has offered to us. So we have this victory. And in Hebrews it says, now he waits until his enemies are made his footstool. So he waits, that image of Jesus conquering death and waiting as we await the kingdom, the fullness of the kingdom, the coming of the kingdom. As we're going into Advent, we wait Jesus' coming, the fullness of what he has won for us by his life, death, and resurrection. Now, in waiting, does this make us idle? No. See, in the Psalms, in Psalm 50, we hear, do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of he-goats? No. Offer praise as your sacrifice to God. Fulfill your vows to the Most High. Then call on me on the day of distress. I will rescue you, and you shall honor me. So we are called to praise, to fulfill our vows. We are called to live out our lives. This is not an idle calling to wait on the Lord. Even though He has won redemption, it is our call to unite ourselves, to participate in this great gift. As we hear from our brother Thomas Aquinas, since Christ's passion proceeded as a kind of universal cause of the forgiveness of sins, it needs to be applied to each individual for the cleansing of personal sins. Now this is done by baptism and penance and the other sacraments. So we participate in the life that Christ has offered us. And we experience a desire for fruitfulness, a desire to be fruitful, to do something great with our lives. This is like Jesus when he says, by this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. When we find that our redemption is in Jesus, when we find that we can unite our sufferings to Jesus, when we can unite our lives to Him, and that without Him we are left without recourse, we are left without anywhere to go. He is the way. We find in Jesus we can unite ourselves to Him. When we suffer, when we lose family and friends, when we are lost in darkness, we can unite ourselves to Jesus. Think of the consolation of that. Jesus ever present with us. We can unite ourselves to Him. And He has won redemption over sin and death. It's worth it. As Jesus said, when a woman is in labor, she is in anguish because her hour has arrived. But when she has given birth to a child, she no longer remembers the pain because of her joy that a child has been born into the world. We are fruitful to the extent that we unite ourselves to Christ. Our lives are fruitful to the extent that we unite ourselves to the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. Let us remember that unless the Lord build the house, they labor in vain who build. Jesus is with us. Let us unite ourselves to His sacred heart. Jesus, never let us be separated from You.